Hello ladies and gents and welcome to another New World video. My name is Antis Gaming and for today's video I will showcase you a tank build which you can use in your PvE adventures and also in your upcoming war battles. Personally, I haven't seen this build before and my buddies and I have been using it in the open beta to great success. So without further ado, enjoy the video. This build is quite special, if I must say so myself. It's not your regular shield, warhammer or great axe tank build like we are all used to seeing nowadays. For this tank build we are going to use the life staff plus the Ice Gauntlet combination, and together with the right perks and gems we will make this build really strong and effective. This build is mostly effective for PvE expeditions and open world dungeons and also in wars. For this tank or even off-tank build, if you want to call it that, I will show you the attributes for the build, the armor, the perks and the gems for both the weapons and your armor, and most importantly, the build path for both of these weapons. Also, like in my previous video, I will show you how to level both of these weapons from level 1 to its max level, which is level 19. So for the attributes, you will mainly focus on leveling up your constitution in the early parts of the game until you reach around 150 constitution. Then you want to put 50 points into focus to have the plus 10% mana regen bonus available to you. Then I would recommend putting 50 points into intelligence so you can do some more damage with your Ice Gauntlet. Afterwards, just keep putting points into constitution to get more and more tanky. When you reach around 250 in constitution, then you will have this buff which is 80% damage reduction when full health, which I believe is actually now 60% after the nerfs to it in the open beta, but this is really strong. Once you have reached 250 points in constitution, I would put the rest of your points either in intelligence or into focus. Now let's get into the armor you will be using for this build. With the recent changes they made in the open beta to armor, with the changes in the threshold, it makes it harder to mix and match to stay under a certain threshold. Therefore, for this specific build, you will use mainly medium armor, with maybe 1 or 2 heavy items or pieces to remain under the heavy threshold to have access to that quick hop and having these bonuses available to you, which you can see on the screen now. So let's get into the perks and gems you will be using for your armor. The main perks you will use are Resilient. You will have 4.8% less damage taken by critical hits. If you apply this to all 5 armor pieces, you are looking at 24% less damage taken by critical hits. It's important to know that most weapons can crit. Even if it's a long range weapon like a musket, you can get crit in the head. This will probably be the only armor perk you will need as a tank. But if you are looking for some more diversity, you could take weapon perks to enhance the weapons you are using. So let's take a look at some of my recommendations. And please remember that weapons perks do not stack, so you can only have one of them. Anyways, the perks are Healing Tomb, Fortifying Sacred Ground, Mending Protection, and Revitalizing Beacon. And finally, a perk which does not stack, which could also be benefit for this build, is Refreshing, to have more cooldown reduction. Now that we know what perks we will be using on our armor, let's take a look at what gems we will be using with our armor. For PvE purposes and dungeons, I personally love to use the Pristine Pearl gem, to increase my luck and getting rare loot from chests and monsters and more chance at getting the best possible loot at dungeons. But if you don't want to go through the hassle of having a set of armor for PvE and for PvP, you could just use the Onyx gem or the Aquamarine gem or even a Ruby gem. At the end, this comes down to personal preference. Also, you will know by the release when you are fighting and what sort of weapons become meta. So if you see a lot of Ice Gauntlet users, you might want to trend towards using an Aquamarine gem and so on. Now let's get into the jewelry and the perks and gems you will be using. We have 3 types of jewelry: the amulet, the ring and the earring. All of these pieces of jewelry will give you different types of perks. Now, if you want to see more detailed video on this, I would recommend checking out Fusion Thunder's video, who has 3 detailed videos on this topic and explains it really well. I'll link his channel and the video down below so you can check that out if you're interested in it. At the end of the day, it comes down to personal preference what perks you want on your jewelry, but let me still show you what I like to use. For the amulet, you have 6 choices that you can go. For PvE, I always like to take a luck to have more chances at getting rare loot, since I'm a loot goblin. But when it comes down to PvP, as a tank, I prefer either having damage resistant perks or cooldown reduction perks. For the earring, you also have 6 choices like you can see. For PvE, I go with threat, so I can keep the monsters off the people who are doing DPS. And for PvP, I like to once again go with cooldown reduction perks. Finally, the ring, you are also giving 6 choices again. For PvE, I like to go with luck, and for PvP, I like to increase my stats, specifically the sacred perk, to have more outgoing healing. Finally, the gems you will be using on your jewelry is a no-brainer. For PvE, you will use luck gems, since we all like that juicy loot, you know. And for PvP, it's the same like the armor, you will see what the meta is and select gems based off that. So you can go on any type of route that you like. Finally, the moment we've all been waiting for, the weapon builds and their perks and gems. Let's start off with the Ice Gauntlet. Here is the full build you will be using, starting from level 1 to level max, which is level 19. Your 3 main abilities will be Ice Pylon, Entombed, and finally Ice Storm. The reasoning behind these 3 spells instead of something like Ice Shower is that you are using this build to be a tank or an off tank, meaning you want to attract mobs to you in PvE and be able to withstand a lot of the damage in PvP. So in PvE, you will use your Ice Pylon, and this together with the Carnelian gem, which generates threat, this will pull mobs towards you, giving your team the time to take down the mobs while you go into your Entombed ability. Also, let's not forget the Ice Storm, which on top of you, doing a lot of damage to mobs as well. This is the thought process behind it, and you will see later the build in action. Also, the ultimate in the builder tree, which is the Ultimate Frost, works extremely well with this build, since it doubles Ice Pylon's health and extends Ice Pylon's radius by 5 meters, making it easier to attract mobs with the Carnelian gem. Since I already told you the gem you will be using for PvE and in your dungeons, I might as well tell you the gem you will be using for PvP. That is none other than the Diamond gem, which will give you a bonus of 15% damage and outgoing healing while at full health. Since basically you will always eat a ration or use a regen potion before going into Entombed, so way before you leave Entombed, you will always be at full health, thus any damage or healing you will do will be amplified by this gem. But otherwise, you could go for a more reliable gem like a Jasper gem, which will increase your damage by 15% after being hit 3 times. Since you are a tank, you are prone to being hit a lot, so this gem can be quite effective. Now, the perks you will be using on your Ice Gauntlet has to be none other than the Pylon Burst to add a 1 meter radius damage AoE when Pylon casts. You could use Healing Tomb as well, but I'd recommend going with Pylon Burst. Now that we have covered the Ice Gauntlet, let's get into the Lifestaff build and why I take the abilities that I take. Here you can see the full Lifestaff build and the order in which I skill my Lifestaff specifically for this build. If you want to see a full healer build, I'd recommend checking out my previous video, I'll link in the description below. Our 3 main abilities which we are using is Sacred Ground, Orb of Protection, and Beacon. The idea behind this is to stand in our healing zone, which is Sacred Ground, to be able to withstand incoming damage from our enemies, and also apply Orb of Protection and Beacon to ourselves, since we will be the one tanking. All of these buffs and Fortify will make us really tanky and pretty much unkillable. Also, if you are playing as an off tank, you would want to apply these buffs to your main tank, so he can withstand the onslaught. The perks you want to run on the Lifestaff are either Fortifying Sacred Ground, Revitalizing Beacon, or mending protection. This comes down to whichever you prefer. All three are very solid choice. Lastly, the gem you want to equip on your lifestaff would be an aquamarine gem. So 50% of your damage is converted to ice. This damage will scale of your base weapon stat or your intelligence, whichever is higher. Now that we have covered the attributes, the armor, jewelry, and the weapons and its perks and gems, let me tell you why this build is amazing and why it can easily compete with your more traditional tank build like the sword and shield with the lifestaff build, or even other variants such as the Great Axe lifestaff build. In PvE, your ice pylon creates threat, meaning you are pulling mobs away from your damage dealers. You also have a lot of tankiness from your kit, and then you have the healing output and fortify buffs from the lifestaff. Also, you deal decent damage with your Ice Gauntlet, and if ever you are in trouble, you can just go into your Entombed ability to buy yourself time and regain health. In PvP, and more specifically in wars, this build is great, since your main purpose is to capture the 3 control points being A, B and C. This build is just perfect for that, since your Ice Storm will act as a zoning tool between you and your opponent, your Ice Pylon, which is really tanky because of your ultimate, and it will do decent damage, and it's just an absolute nuisance for your enemies. And the Entombed ability means that your enemies can kill you. Then we haven't even gone through all the abilities and utility which the lifestaff offers, which will keep you alive so long. Now just imagine for yourself 5 to 10 people using this specific build and they stack on top of a control point. I don't see the enemy doing anything to them. That's the logic behind it at least. But I haven't had the luxury yet to try this build in a war. But I can assure you that if maybe we get the chance to meet each other in a war, either with or against each other, that I will be running this specific build. Well guys, that was it for my tank build in New World. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to smash the like button. Also subscribe to my channel if you want to see more New World content. Also, don't hesitate to drop a comment down below to tell me what you think of this build. Like always, it's been my pleasure and I'll catch you in my next video. Peace!